Consistent self-improvement, everybody. You are now listening to American Gypsy Podcast. I am your host, Classic.
And I'm Gypsy. And today we have a very special guest, Mickias Solomon. Did I pronounce that right?
You got it.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for
Thank
being here live in the studio.
Appreciate it.
I guess before you introduce yourself,
Yeah.
I was actually reading about you, and we have a similar background.
Yeah.
In that, for those of you who don't know, I was actually born here in the U.S., and then I migrated to Ethiopia, lived there for 10 years, and then found myself back in the U.S. And I was reading your story, and I'm like, I never find anyone like that. So introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. So, well, first, thanks for inviting me. This is awesome. Very excited. So I am, my name is Mickias Solomon. Everyone calls me Mickey. Okay. So feel free to call me Mickey. I am a finance professional. I've been in finance for 10 plus years. You know, me as a human being, I was born in the United States. I was born in Houston, Texas, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and my parents moved to Los Angeles when I was, I don't know, maybe a little under a year or so. And my mother, she moved back to Ethiopia to take over the family business, which is a restaurant. It's a pretty popular restaurant in Ethiopia, in Addis. You know, part of the deal was like, I'm taking my son with me. That'd be good for him from a cultural aspect. Yeah. You know, I didn't, you know, I was 7 at the time. You know, I didn't speak the language. I got there and it was just like a foreign place to me, but.
Were you excited to go?
Shoot, I mean, this was a long time ago, but I think at the time I was super excited. Mm. Yeah. It was just kind of like this big adventure, you know? Yeah. And, so we moved there. This was like 1993. So it's a long time ago. And a couple of years before, the communist regime, you know, they left. So things were just kind of like, there wasn't a whole lot out there at that time. And I stayed there, went to school there for 7 years. So did elementary, did junior high. And then a year prior to going to high school, I just told my mom, like, hey, like, I think I want to go back and live with my dad. And so I came back to Los Angeles to finish high school. Did high school here in Los Angeles, and then moved to New York to go to college. And I have family in New York. My mother's siblings live there. So straight out of college, went to finance. I worked at Capital One for a few years. Then I met my wife, and she's born and raised in Los Angeles. So after she graduated college, I told her to move to New York, and we started dating, and we got serious. And she was like, hey, like, my family's in Los Angeles. Like, I really want to go back to LA. And so we were looking for something, but I found a really good job at B of A. So I moved to San Francisco for a couple of years, and then moved back to Los Angeles to do graduate school. So I came in 2018, been here since, so it's about to be 5 years this year. That's the short of it.
Okay, that's very interesting. How did you get in? What inspired you to get into finance or business?
I liked money. I liked money, but at the same time, you know, I was exposed to it just like living in New York, you know. I was exposed to it because, so, you know, as a part-time job, I worked at restaurants. You know, that was like, if you had some semblance of social skills and people just liked you, then working in a restaurant as a server, it works out very well for you from like a monetary standpoint, you know. And I was like maybe 19 or 20, and I was making a good amount of money. Like I was just like, do I need to go to school? Like this is good cash, you know? And this was like during the financial recession. So I got a job. I was like, okay, you know what? I need to like find something more stable, because the restaurant industry is tough, especially in New York. You know, the lifestyle is like, hey, you work all day and then you come out and then you're so exhausted and stressed, you just go out to a bar and just blow it all out, all your money, you know? So it's like, all right, let me try to find a job that's more stable. So I started applying to more like executive level kind of, you know, or like I would say more fine dining. And I found a job at Capital One, the financial services company. They had a restaurant in the office for the executives. So when they bring clients, when they are doing interviews, they kind of wine and dine people there. And so I got a job there, you know, and it was like a really good one. Like they were paying good money. The hours were like 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. So, you know, after work, I could just go to school. So it was a very like convenient kind of a situation for me.
And it's strategic too.
Yeah.
Just with who you'll be networking with.
Exactly. And that's exactly how I got my first job in finances. You know, there was, you know, she was a mentor to me. She was, I mean, at the executive level, the only African-American woman. And I just kind of build relationships with her. And by the time I finished school, you know, I just approached her and said, hey, can I get an internship or, you know, anything, you know, to kind of just give me a shot pretty much.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know what? She's like, did you finish school? I said, yes. She's like, and I remember she called me into her office and she said, like, essentially like, don't embarrass me. Like, you know, I'm sticking my neck out for you. Like, show up, like, make sure you do a good job. And she connected me with one of her like direct reports. And, you know, at the time, like I was so hungry, for an opportunity. They saw it and they just gave me a shot. And since then I just been in finance. And so, yeah, that's my story and how I got connected to that opportunity.
Nice. So you say you went to Ethiopia at the age of 7. In between 7 and high school, you picked up Amaninya?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how fast did you pick it up from just living there, or?
Yeah, you know, I would say probably in 1 year.
Okay.
In 1 year, it was kind of interesting because when my dad came, so I moved in 93. In 94, my dad came to visit. And I was so integrated into the society because at that age, you're playing with kids.
Yeah.
You know,
it's
like,
a lot easier younger.
Yeah, when you're younger, it's like you're out there. Well, first you learn all the bad words, right? Like, you know, so I was talking a whole lot of smack. But I remember my dad saying to me, like, hey, like your Amharic is really good, but you've kind of forgotten English. And it was true. Like I had kind of taken a step back from like speaking English because it wasn't like, I mean, you go to school, you learn English, but when you leave school, you're speaking Amharic the whole time. And so, you know, my dad was a little concerned that I was going to forget English. And so my first year when I got there, I went to the school called ICS.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very American school.
Yes,
international school. And he took me out because it got really expensive. Like it's essentially it's like putting your kid in a school in the US at a private school that costs like a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, and at that time it was a lot of money.
College money.
Yeah, at that time I think my dad was paying like $10,000 a year. This is like this is 93, 94, right? So, you know, now it's probably probably double, but he took me out and he put me in they put me in Greek school, which was also an international school, but it was just like it was a good school. I met a lot of friends, you know, very similar, like who either like were born and raised here and moved to Ethiopia, similar to me, or people who were born in Ethiopia and were going to the U.S., you know, during summer vacations. Yeah,
being groomed as well to go to college.
Here.
Abroad.
Or abroad or whatever the case may be.
I went to Indian school.
Okay. Yeah.
My cousins went to Greek school, so we all kind of frequented those.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, so the long story of it, that's the long story, but essentially I had kind of picked up just everyday kind of dialogue. Like even to this day, you know, I speak to my mom and my family in Amharic, but if you ask me, like, I feel like speaking Amharic of like day to day, and the Amharic, for example, you hear on the news or more in a professional setting, I can't keep up on that level, but I can have a conversation, right? I'm more of a like, and I also know all the like it's more of like the street language Amharic that I'm really good at. You know what I mean? The slang, right? Yeah. Like that is where I'm at, but I can't read or write or anything like that. I can kind of pick up on like the Fido, the alphabets, but I outside of that, like, you know, and then you forget it sometimes, you know.
Yeah, if you don't use it. My thing is, like, when I was there, I didn't like how I spoke English in the accent, so I didn't like using English there. And then when I moved here, I don't like how I speak Amharic. So, like, in Tigrinya, I speak that as well, and it's like it's a double-edged sword. But I don't get to practice it. I speak it very well. I mean, no, not speak it very well. I understand very well. And my mom speaks to me in Tigrinya, and I respond back in English. Yeah. And that's how it works. You know, we understand each other perfectly. It's just like I can communicate a lot faster in English than I can in
I still, you know, one thing that I always think about is that folks who speak Tigrinya, I feel like the families do a better job teaching their kids Tigrinya if there's Tigrinya speakers.
Because they have to, I guess, especially if you're living in Ethiopia, it's like you can only get it at home, kind of, and around your family, because the country you live in speaks a different language. Right. And then you go to school and you kind of have to use English. So at home, they try to keep it strictly Tigrinya.
Yeah. No, I applaud, you know, I applaud that, because I feel like with Amharic, like, especially I see all my friends, they are not, like, if they're born and raised here, forget it. They're not speaking it. Only a small percentage of people that I know born and raised here that speak Amharic. Very, very few, you know? Yeah. And so, you know, it's kind of like, for example, you know, my son, you know, who's joining us at the end of March, he, you know, it's like at home, my wife and I speak English, you know, 100%. So we're going to have to be very diligent and going to make sure, like, we go to Ethiopia, make sure he understands, you know, the culture and can speak the language. Otherwise it'll be forgotten, which, you know, you don't want.
I've picked up a little Amharic, and that's what I was wondering, just from being there and, you know, embraced in it. How long does it kind of take if you're really focused on picking up the language? So, that sounds about right. Even after being here going on 5 years, I'm starting to really focus on speaking Spanish.
Okay.
So I'm realizing, even just being here and being surrounded in it, I know that, I should be able to pick it up pretty fast.
Yeah.
and was curious on where I would probably be in a year. But yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think it would even be sooner. Let's say, for example, you guys just decided to go to, I don't know, Mexico City for like 3-4 months.
Not too big of a difference.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
In Mexico.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yes, but like
Yeah.
I have plenty of passengers. You know, of course,
Yeah.
I drive rideshare, so I have plenty of passengers only Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that it inspires me. Like, yo, if they're here and speak no English,
True.
then okay.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah. That's great.
Do you ever see yourself living in Ethiopia or investing in it?
Yeah. So when I was in graduate school, I was kind of like, I had this blank kind of slate because, it's when you go to business school, it's like, well, most people are trying to pivot. People from different backgrounds, like professional backgrounds, like artists, they're like, okay, I want to do consulting for myself, right? And so they go to business school and just kind of like pivot. And so for me, I was thinking the same when I said, okay, I want to like go and kind of reinvent myself. And my second year, COVID happened. And so that kind of like screwed up my plans of kind of like, I was really attempting to move back. My wife was on board. We were thinking about, okay, if we, just look at the opportunity landscape and say, okay, I have this much experience. My mom's business is doing well. At the time, she was looking to expand, and she's like, hey, I only want to expand if you come over. And so I had that platform as well, not just the professional one, but the opportunity to take over my mother's business, which, it's like, and if you've ever, it's not just Ethiopia, but like Africa in general, it's not an easy environment to do business. Yeah. But for me, I was like, oh, that sounds interesting to me. Cause I'm like, if you know how to do business in Africa, you can do business everywhere.
Yeah.
So I was just like, this would be a good time for me to go back. COVID happened. I was still trying. I was trying to look at the landscape, but the older you get, your risk appetite starts kind of like going down. And so that was kind of what was happening. It's like, I saw the window of opportunity and I was like, I need to jump now. And like, I was looking at it and I was like, should I jump? Should I not? Like, I've worked so hard. What if I go to Ethiopia and nothing pans out? Like, I just got into my head too much because it was just too much of a jump at this point. Maybe when I was like, if I was 24, 25, cool. But when you're 35, it's a little different. It's like, you're like, okay, I have a life. I have to think about my family, future and all this stuff. And so I kind of took a step back and I said, all right, I think for now, I'm going to stay put. Not to mention the country was going through all kinds of situations. So I was like, not a good time. However, I have invested my time. I advise a startup there. I've worked on a few other projects because I do see the opportunity in the future. So
that's one thing. Every time I go there, it just feels like there's so much opportunity to do untapped market. Yeah. Is there a certain industry you are excited about or feel like is good in Ethiopia? Because it's different than U.S. So
it's very different. And a lot of people who have moved back, who try to take the same business model or business plan here that works and go there, have failed. And really, the way you got to think about it is like, you have to adjust the way you kind of look at the business landscape and mirror, essentially exactly what they do. You have to understand their lifestyle. You have to dig deep and say, okay, does it make sense for Africa? Does it make sense for the local market? And for me, the number one untapped opportunity is financial services. And the reason why I say that is because the access to capital markets, access to just money, credit is still like a very small percentage of people who have access to that, to money. And so the reason why the U.S. is what it is because we have a very robust capital market system, stock exchange, we have that platform and people have access to money. Like you could just borrow money to start stuff. Yeah, it's credit.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge opportunity there. And I'm very excited to see what's going to happen the next few years. They're opening up the banking industry. So that means that they're going to have, when they open up the banking industry, because essentially the past 50 or 60 years, the past 40, 50 years, I would say, there haven't been any foreign banks that were in the country. They restricted it just for Ethiopian banks. And so obviously with that is that technology, right? If you're not competing, then why do you need to invest in technology? It is what it is. When we get there, we get there. Yeah. But when you have like these major, African banks that are coming in and setting up shop, and there's also the human resources, the human capital, right? They come in, they train local Ethiopians how to run a business, and so that will elevate the economy, that will elevate the country to get to where it needs to get to. So all of that gets me excited. I'm like, wow, there's so much opportunity here, but they're just starting. So it's going to take some time, and there's going to be mistakes, and there might be like collapse of certain industries or certain big banks and stuff like that. But because I'm in the industry, I can see like, okay, I can really see the opportunity, and hopefully, one day when that opportunity, knocks on my door, I can take advantage of it, because essentially all of this knowledge, all of the skills that I've attained, I think I want to go back and really like apply it there. So, yeah.
What are your feelings on the integration of blockchain in financial industry? And is that
next
good
level
thing, or does that scare you? What are your
No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing, right? I think first people need to kind of like separate crypto out of blockchain. Mm-hmm. Blockchain itself, the technology is next level. I mean, it's going to change how banking transpires across the world. A lot of people don't know, but there's a lot of apps, payment apps. I'll give you an example. There's a lot of there's Zelle, there's Venmo, there's Cash App, and all these, apps that are front facing. And that technology on the back end is still technology that was built in the early 1970s. Like, they haven't changed it. It's the same system. Right?
I was just hearing the airline industry is the same way.
Exactly.
It's like they've been using old stuff.
Exactly. It's and so, they haven't, because it takes a lot of money to it works, and what happens is it's a bank is a bank. Like it's like they don't have any competition. They do have competition, but when it comes to large money movement, it becomes like they're the only players out there. And so now they're kind of like, okay, how do we make the system move quickly? It's, when you send money from your bank account to Ethiopia, you have no idea how many hands it touches. There's sometimes there's 2 or 3 banks in the middle, and everyone takes a piece of that, and okay, so you have to pay your bank, and then you have to pay a bank that is facilitating it, and then then the bank in Ethiopia takes a cut. So, that is so inefficient. And when you think about it at a large scale, sometimes you don't even have visibility, and then there's fraud. Like, I think the number was like $70 billion through wire transfers were flagged as fraud. Wow. It was crazy.
70 billion.
70 billion. Yeah.
And where does that money go?
It goes to people who are committing the fraud.
Yeah,
so
just disappearing a little bit.
Yeah, it's so essentially what's happening is it's like, and a lot of times this happens where, like, if you're at a big company or even like a small company, someone will send an email saying, hey, with the CFO's name, we'll say, hey, I really need you to send money like immediately, $100,000 to this account. And someone on the payroll staff will say, oh, shoot, he wants me to send, $100,000. And so they'll send it. And then when they reconcile, they say, where's this money gone? Well, you told me to send it. And then they look at the email is different. So someone hacked their system. So this happens all the time. Or even someone internally, like someone on the staff says, either uses a checkbook and just writes a check, puts it in an account. And so it happens all the time. People get in trouble.
Because I think I've seen the random email or invoice from PayPal.
It happens.
And wondering what is that about? Yeah.
I always get those scam likely emails.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think blockchain has I think it has the opportunity to kind of secure. They haven't gotten there yet from an institutional level where they can make sure that like there are guardrails and checks and balances, but they're developing that. And then there's the visibility. Like when I send you money, like one, it's fast. It's like it happens so quickly. And then it's like if you can actually see all of the transactions that, between a network of whoever's participating on that blockchain. So,
and it's visible for everybody.
It's visible for everybody. So, my boss, who my boss's boss's boss, Jamie Dimon, who is, I would say he's like the Wall Street kind of like guy who's always talking about crypto and how it's bad and it's this, but he always says blockchain is the future. And he's right, because that's where, the value is. That's my opinion. I think that's where the value is from like, making things work a lot more smoother,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
sometimes, when people think blockchain, they're thinking crypto, but there's also even the smart contract aspect too.
Exactly.
And all of that. So
I've heard a few negative things on the smart contract part, almost like when, like if the money is, kind of held in escrow.
Yeah.
What happens with that as far as, or does that, like, even when there's just millions just sitting there, if this contract doesn't work out, or there's some error that happens, and then they're just like, okay, this money is in, we're holding on to it, and each party loses out. Is that going to be something that is just going to have to be a part of?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about like how that's going to work for smart contracts. And if you have someone overseeing it, it really like it defeats the whole purpose of it being decentralized. So
because it get pretty technical.
Yeah, it could.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of regulation that's happened with smart contracts because, like, with the traditional ways, like you have the legal team and all of these people involved to kind of make sure there's checks and balances, but you can have a lot of fraud in a smart contract. So there's still a long ways to go in kind of securing what happens if you don't go through with the deal, So it's still a long way to go.
There's still a long way to go. I feel like maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, that's where we're going to be at. I'm more like thinking about this whole AI thing right now. Like, that's blowing my mind. Not worried about blockchain.
They're taking us fast. Since 2020, they've really been taking us kind of fast on things. Like NFTs, and then it was this, and then it was
I feel like
else,
it was happening all along. They're just telling us about it when they're ready. It's like, or it's now coming to the mainstream.
Well, you're right, because when I heard, like, when it launched, they said, oh, like the folks, it was like a forum of like, it was like Google, Elon Musk was part of it. It was just like a bunch of like heavy hitters that were funding this thing. And no, I didn't hear about it. It wasn't public. And then they launched it, and I was like, let me try this thing out. And I was like, I just put in a few things. I was showing my friends. They came over to my place. I was like, have you guys heard about ChatGPT? Like, nah. I was like, you guys got to check this out. So I just pulled it up, and then I started writing. Like, I was just asking questions, and it was just like, boom, 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 boom. And everyone was just like, what is this?
I just recently started trying it, and it was pretty interesting. I mean, you don't need.
Last time I tried it.
Oh, really? Yeah, like you don't even need to ask Google anymore. It's a more in-depth way to search now.
Absolutely. And the question that I have is like, so I mean, right now it's flooded the internet, but like so it passed like a law, medical, and one of the, like, at Wharton, which is like one of the best business schools, it passed an exam, I heard pretty well. So how, like,
but I
these
could
kids,
see that, though, because the exam is made by people, and if it has that data, and of course it would already have the answers to most of the questions that would be on the exam, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like like that critical thinking that you need on those exams.
Yeah,
like
I guess the human part,
the human piece of it, like that's kind of scary. But also, like, these kids who are in school, like, I can only imagine what they're doing right now. Like,
I mean, it's one thing having like Cliff Notes and Wikipedia, but it's like ChatGPT, like, break down my answer for me. I heard there's like people even giving it code to write, and it's I haven't experimented with that yet, but I'm like, seriously.
I gotta tell you about a funny story. When I came back from Ethiopia my freshman year, I had no idea what plagiarism was. So the teacher gave me a project. They gave the class a project. And I literally just went online, copied and pasted the whole thing, and I put it in my paper, and I gave it to him. He just gave me an F. And I was like, I went to my dad. I was like, Dad, like, I don't understand. Like, I literally, this is exactly what they were looking for. I gave it to him. I gave it to the teacher, gave me an F. He's like, nah, you can't do that. You have to, like,
put it in your own words. It's like, what's the point of school then?
It's just like, welcome to America, like that. Because, you know, Ethiopia, we weren't doing that. We weren't even writing essays at that time. Like, it was more, everything was all about, like, memorizing. It was a lot of, like, it was a lot of, like, I was taking biology, chemistry, physics all in 1 year. Like, that's the way they kind of do their thing. And so they have you write all these notes and write. And then when the test comes, you have to memorize everything from front to back and write these kind of like open-ended questions, like just straight from the head, you know? So it's like, and then you come here and you're like, oh, it's different. It's not easy. It's easier, but it's also like different because you have to use different type of skills. Yeah. But
I guess what the teachers are teaching and what they're asking for is different.
Yeah. So
to go back to your experience in New York versus LA, you know, what's your opinion on the quality of life living in New York versus LA?
It depends. How much money are you making?
I saw a video this morning, I'm sure it was parody, of the girl explaining her $3,100 apartment. And, you know, she was just going, you know, basically the stuff that she was making, it seemed like it was working. It wasn't working, you know. And so. explaining, I guess, what you probably get for 3,100 in a place like New York. I think it was Bushwick or something like that.
Yeah. So, New York is one of those places where you got to have, and this is my personal opinion, you got to have either you come in when you're young and you hustle. It's a place to hustle because the pace of life is going so fast that things are just constantly moving. People are moving from one place to the next. Like businesses are, in that same sense, they're also moving very fast. So you have all these opportunities that pop up for you. And if you're hungry, then that's a place to be. Okay. That's why they always say, oh, you make it in New York, you can make it anywhere.
I feel like that here, though. It's like you can make it in LA, you can make it anywhere in US.
But there's a certain hustle and bustle of New York.
Yeah.
It's a bit different because everyone is just work. It's like there's nothing else. And then it's winter and you're like, all right, like gotta go to work. It's like here is like, at least, I think the quality of life here is I feel like it's much better.
Okay.
Right. But don't get me wrong. Like it's as expensive. LA is, I feel like as expensive as New York.
Okay.
Especially if you consider the car, right? The car. And I say that because my wife and I share one car because I'm just like, I hate driving. Like, I like nice cars, but I hate driving.
Right.
And since I've moved to LA, I still have refused to get a car. I'm still taking Uber because I just want to live close to my workplace. And I just want to have, like, I don't want to think about parking, right? Parking is like, okay, got to go to work. I have to pay, a couple $100 for, like parking at my office. Then it's like, what about tickets? What about gas? What about insurance? Like, I already got one car. Like, that's enough. And, if you kind of add all that up, and the rent, you're up there. It might not be as close to New York, but it's expensive. And folks are, like 3-bedroom apartment will cost you, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, because I think the average, I read the average 1-bedroom in New York is $4,000. That's the average.
Wow. 1 bedroom?
In Manhattan.
In Manhattan, okay.
In Manhattan.
How many square feet would that be?
Man, maybe, I don't even know. Maybe 600, maybe.
God.
So, I feel like that's, that's kind of like, that's the kind of like life that if you're driven and you're not home, people are okay, living that kind of lifestyle. For us, we had a decent 2-bedroom apartment in Harlem. It was like I was literally walking distance from Central Park. I was like 3 blocks away from Central Park, but it was like the kind of the beginning stages of going into Harlem, or like the tail end, I guess, of like going from Harlem into West Side. And, I liked it because it kind of, as soon as the weekend came, we're kind of like out of like the craziness. Like we're in Harlem. It's like there's culture. There's a lot of like diversity and all that stuff. We got to a point where it was just like that hustle bustle life was just not for us. Like we were just like, you know what? I don't know if we can do this for another couple of years. And so, people make that decision. A lot of folks left New York during the pandemic.
I heard
a lot.
A lot of people end up in Atlanta and different places.
Yeah, people are just like, you know what? Because New York it's about the social aspect of it. It's about people connecting, and if you don't have that, right? And I feel like now it's gone back to like pre-recession levels, but still, like a lot of people just had that realization, like, do I need to be in the city? Maybe I move to New Jersey, maybe I live in Long Island or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. I'm still surprised at how many people don't really drive in LA. Like,
Yeah, that's me.
For a big city like this.
I know. And I think eventually I'm going to have to, but I'm trying to wait it out as much as possible.
Yeah. Don't blame me. Traffic is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. As far, or at least she've always talked about Ethiopia being a good place to raise kids versus in America. What's your opinion on?
I agree to a certain level. Like at a certain age, I think it's good to bring them back. I guess it depends on the situation, right? If you're kind of like us, then I think at some point you want to bring them back, just because of the education, and to integrate them into, like, if they're going to be here, integrate them back into kind of like society, if you will, or it's not that Ethiopia is not society, but more of you want them to get exposed to different type of thinking, the education, all that stuff.
You want them to be able to seamlessly go between the two cultures, because I feel like if you don't get exposure to America by like at least 16 or younger, it's kind of becomes hard to integrate here.
And it doesn't have to be the U.S. It could be Europe too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find Europeans, like Habesha Europeans, we're similar, but we're kind of different. So. But I kind of like their perspective because they're more international. I like that. But I think one of the things that if I think about my childhood, I wish I didn't come back until I finished high school. And I tell my mom that all the time. I was like, I wish I just finished high school back home. I think it would have been better for me, thinking, like, because that integration, that first year, like, it was a struggle because it's like, man, I came back, like, all right, I have an accent. Kids are like making fun of you. Calling you African booty scratcher or something.
Because you forget about it sometimes.
Man, y'all was
and you
hard on people.
Yes. I don't want to be racist, but especially black people.
Yeah.
But I watch videos of me when I first moved to America, and I'm like, I talk like that. That's terrible.
Yeah. It's and kids are not, man. They're terrible because they'll let you know what you're deficient in.
My thing was I used to listen to a lot of American music because I had a brother that lived in America, so he used to send us a lot of music and different things. So I had exposure to like hip hop and things, and probably pretty young to be exposed to it. So when I moved to America, even though I had a thick accent, the music thing really helped me a little bit because they're like, oh, you listen to all the music. So that helped a little bit integrate me into the culture.
I think the music was the connector.
Yeah.
The music, movies a little bit, but music was just like,
different.
Yeah, I was constantly just, when I was in Ethiopia, and my dad used to just record BET. Like, this is when BET only had music, right?
Good old days.
I don't even know I don't know what they're showing now, but back then it was just like music videos, that was it. And he would record it, send me a VHS tape, and then I would put in the VCR when it got to Ethiopia, and then I would record it on a tape. Yeah. So I'd take that, and then when my mom used to take me to school, I just put it in the car and just listen to that. So I'm like, have you heard this? It's that new P. Diddy, man.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
to I guess look at the differences with housing right now. We've considered buying, a house in California. And I saw a random list on social media that had like a top places of buying houses and things like that. How do you feel about as far as where we are right now in the world financially, and as far as where the housing market is going on, buying a house, either in California or different places, or even like Ethiopia and stuff like that?
Yeah, shoot, where do I start? I still think Well, let's start with LA, because LA is expensive to buy a house. I would say that we're going into just kind of, I guess let me take a step back. If you look at like the macro environment right now with rates, they're just continuing to hike them, the Federal Reserve, and obviously that impacts mortgage rates. What we're kind of seeing is that like it's cooling down the housing market, and which is a good thing, because it's like at some point you could not buy a house in LA, even if it was even if it was going for like, let's say $800K, you go bid for that house, there's 20 people bidding as well, and that house just got sold for 1.3. That has been kind of like the continuous thing that was happening during like 2021 and 2022. And essentially normal people who are not millionaires were kind of like, pushed out of the market.
Yeah.
Now it's like we're seeing like the rates are high. People who were looking to buy are kind of slowly coming out of the market. The folks that were like, who have money, who I don't know, they were just like going in and they were like bidding on these houses or whatever the case may be. But essentially like the market in LA is still hot. So it's like, you're either we're at the, like that point where housing prices are still high, but at the same time, people are still buying and the rates are high. So it's like, you're going to pay a lot of money for the house, and the debt that you're taking out is going to be expensive. So it's like, but it's getting better, meaning the housing prices are slowing down and they're coming down slowly. Now, the best time to buy, and it's like you have to kind of time it. It's like when the prices go down and the rates start going down, it's like you got to go buy, because it's like that's the time where you have to be able to kind of balance that. So it's kind of like all right, how do I find, okay, as soon as rates go down, okay, let me go into the market now. And you have to just buy right away. Otherwise, people start coming in, they crowd, and even though the debt is not going to be as expensive, the house will be expensive. So now you're kind of like paying the same amount.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where you have to kind of like be in tuned. I think in Ethiopia, the challenge is that it's the currency. Like if you go out there with USD, you're king, queen, whatever. You have cash, you can, but the issue is for people who are living locally, the money is becoming like paper, because the currency is deflating like every year by like a high percentage. They have really high inflation there. And so a house that potentially could cost you like 6 million, like local currency, next year will cost you maybe 8, 7, whatever the case may be. So it's like, it's one of those things. And then, there's corruption and stuff like that. Like you want to build a house, like you have to have someone, like boots have to be on the ground to oversee that whole
How
thing.
much different is that from here now?
Yeah.
No, but there's no like credit system.
I
like there's
understand, yeah,
not
that
really a
part.
loan.
Like, you're
Maybe
paying
there is
up.
now, but
Yeah, out front.
yeah, you're
fine.
paying up front.
And that was once a bragging thing on a video, though, that I saw, because they were saying, at least when you buy there, you own it.
Yeah.
At least if you can work up to get it, most of the stuff that you have, you own. So it's not a loan thing, how they look in America. Most people have everything on credit. So it's not like you really own what you have. You're paying on it. If something happens, it can be taken away. But a lot of people in Africa, if they have a house, it's their house. They've paid up front for
There's
it.
caveats to that.
Yeah, yes and no, because so I'll tell you this. My mom has a restaurant, as I mentioned when we opened up the call. Prior to, it's the same restaurant, but my grandmother, she had the restaurant first. It was a family restaurant in a really predominant area. And so here's what happened. They were trying to develop, they opened up this really nice hotel, Sheraton. It's a very, I don't know if you,
Yeah.
it's like, it's huge and it's really nice. And the areas were,
Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. No, the area was needed to be kind of developed, and the government literally came to my family and said, "Hey, like either you guys are gonna have to like," and this they fully own this. They say either you guys are gonna have to build or you're gonna have to sell. Like there's no other option. So there are instances like that it happens. Yeah. You're in kind of this zone, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, that happens, and so you kind of have to like make moves. So they sold it, and my mom opened her own thing. But essentially, like it's kind of like those things where it's just like, yeah, you own the land, but you're still at the mercy of the government,
Yeah, and they can also be war and things like instability, and you could lose your house and things like that.
Yeah,
This happen.
yeah.
So there's pros and cons, but yeah, you do have to, if you're thinking about investing in Ethiopia, like you gotta like have most things upfront cash. But nowadays there's like people are doing payment systems.
Yeah,
and things like that is opening up.
They're doing that, and as a matter of fact, when I went back, the last time I went was November 2019, right before COVID, and I was, I opened up. Like they call it a diaspora account, and it's essentially for Ethiopians that are coming from abroad. They're like, hey, open up an account. We'll give you a high interest rate to save your. They want the dollars, so they facilitate that, and as part of that, they give you like a financing thing where they're like, hey, if you invest, for example, $100,000, we'll front like. Whatever, if you want to buy a house or something like that, they'll give you financing for that as long as you show proof of income in the U.S.
Okay.
So they're starting to do something like that to have, now it's not like a 20% down thing. It's kind of like hey, bring 50% and we'll give you the other 50% if you show proof of income and, this and that. So, it's a more of a strategy to bring people back into the country and invest, right? So I think it'll work out for them in the long term.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's your favorite Habesha restaurant in Los Angeles?
Man. So right now, Lalibela is probably my favorite. They do a good job, and Mesob does a good job as well. But Lalibela is like my go-to.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I heard on one of the podcasts you had someone. She was Abisha. She was talking about how you guys were talking about the breakfast thing. I'm like, I don't know why they don't have breakfast, Ethiopian breakfast.
Seriously, man, it just like it really bothers me because
there's a market for that actually.
We lived in DMV, and if you've been there, like there's so many breakfast spots.
Yeah,
and
even in Atlanta.
Even Atlanta was awesome too. But here they just really don't.
Yeah, I think there's a market for that, and somebody needs to jump on that because if you do it well, you can clean up very nicely.
Yeah, and I'm like. And it doesn't even have to be with Ethiopians or Eritreans. Like everybody likes.
It's open.
Everyone likes the food. So, maybe that's.
You make it more like for everyone, not like a very traditional one.
Yeah.
More open to everyone. Like so you can have
a fusion.
I think there's definitely an opportunity for
probably
that.
If you focused on coffee and have the breakfast.
Yeah.
Because Atlanta did a lot of that. Like they'll reinvent some things to make it more modern or Americanized. So it's I definitely. What's your favorite breakfast item?
Man,
Fool
me,
is mine.
yeah, I love fool.
Yeah.
I think I am a meat eater. Like I like,
I feel like that's part of the culture.
yeah, but it's like I'm just it's a little too much for me. Like I eat a lot of meat, so I think for me it's like I like a mixture of stuff, not just one. Like I like having the fur and the eggs and the little tips, and like I like having.
You one of those people, or there's the meat combination plates.
I'm actually not a meat combination person.
Okay, gotcha.
But I like when I go to Lalibela, for example, I like having tips and control.
I like dips.
Right? Like I like that combo with some shiro or something like that.
Yeah.
Not the kidful, but the dips.
Yeah. Control is you gotta have you gotta have like if you're eating raw kitfo, that palate,
taste, huh?
that palate has to be ready.
Is it really though? Like I don't feel like it has such a strong taste. It's like sushi. When people think sushi, if you haven't eaten sushi, they think like I don't know what they're thinking, but it's something disgusting.
Yeah.
But when they try it, it's like it's
it's
not that it's not that strong of a taste. So I don't feel like kitfo has a strong taste to get used to.
True.
It's not like what's that? Not sardine, anchovies or something where it's
Here's what I would say. I feel like it has to be done right because if you don't do it right, it just looks like chopped meat, raw meat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all right. Like imagine just eating raw meat and you're like, okay, I'm just eating raw meat. But when you're eating like a kitfo that's not well done, but like it's done well.
Yeah.
If it's done well, then it doesn't feel like you're eating like raw meat. It just feels like it just with the, the butter and all that stuff that they add, it just feels like, it doesn't feel like you're actually like eating up like a cow. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like,
it takes, a little iron stomach almost, I guess, if you're with your mindset that you have when you're knowing what it is and when you're eating it. If you're not, used to it.
Yeah.
You gotta
prepare
your stomach for it, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah, I grew up watching the cow, alive 1 minute and then he's hanging, skinned and chilling there, and they're offering you some raw meat. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, they used to do that with the deer in Mississippi. So, well, no, they didn't. We never saw it alive. Of course, they had to shoot it and then bring it. But that was
my dad, he's, he got me used to eating raw meat, toresigas, in Amharic at a young age. So, to this day, I still eat it. Like, it's more of a delicacy kind of a situation where like once in a while at a wedding or something like that,
right,
I'll do it, especially with like, you mix it with all the, the spices, and all that stuff. It tastes amazing. But I could see how it looks on the outside. Like if you're eating raw meat, like, you know what I mean? Like,
especially in California, it's like, it's a lot of vegans and
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, something in every culture that they have that, that's there, from tartar to everything else. Yeah.
The French eat tartar like it's nothing.
I love steak myself. I'm not a big, beef eater, but I went to Brazil when I was 15, so it's like there's a steak taste that's there and embedded that I'm like, man, I just want to taste that same taste from then.
They know how to make meat, Brazilians.
Yeah.
They definitely know how to do like the fogo de chao. I mean, I feel like that's more commercialized, but
I kind of feel that way too.
But I just like I remember for Valentine's Day, like years ago, I took my wife to a Brazilian restaurant. Their food is so good. Yeah. So, they know how to make good meat, steak and all that stuff. Yeah.
Same with Korean barbecue. I'm discovering since I moved here, because it was not that popular everywhere else. So it's really good.
Korean barbecue is big in LA.
Yeah.
It's big. It's big.
Yeah.
Well, before we get ready to close out, is there any last questions that you had that you may not?
I guess let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm not on social media right now. But yeah, I'm just taking
Good for you.
Yeah, I'm just taking a quick break, just figure out, just I think it's always good to just take a step back. But I am on LinkedIn. My full name again is Mickias Solomon, and Mickias, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Let's connect on a professional level. I really appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you. It's been a magical moment, and definitely, enjoyed the conversation. We would love to have you back in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Working on some panel discussion type things, and we definitely know you have a lot of great jewels to bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would love to have you back.
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can find us on any major podcast platform, as well as AmericanGypsy.com. And all the information, Mikey's information, as well as ours, would be in the description. And we also have consistent self-improvement shirts at luamlee.com. And we also have crystals at bookabearwrite.com or bookabearwrite on Etsy. As always, all of the information will be in the description. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Mikey.
With my music,
yes,
KLACCIK CARPENTA, Classic Carpenter, on all major platforms, Spotify, iTunes, all of the above. Thank you again, Mikey. Mickey. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Consistent self-improvement and peace.
Peace.
Peace.